Soccer-wise fans, as you'd expect. The biggest. All right. We are ready to Roxy's. What's happening right now? All right. David Goss, Tom Bogert with you for Soccer-Wise. Another week of MLS and NWSL coverage coming to you live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, I believe, although I can't make Twitter work right now, not in a streaming way, I cannot get it to work in my life, which would not probably be a me problem. That seems like a larger issue. Further, technology, not my problem. Or you can listen to us, of course, anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Did not do a mailbag episode yesterday because it was Labor Day. You can get access to the mailbag via the Patreon. You can subscribe and join us and be in our Discord and send us messages and all that type of stuff. So we're going to sprinkle it in over the course of the week here. We've got some today, some NWSL stuff to do with Jordan tomorrow. Tom, how was your time off? How relaxed were you over the last 3 days?
It's been nice, not going to lie. I've been indexing on college football, just hanging out, taking the last weekend of summer here. And even today, getting back to normal work, just because the window just closed. So I think a lot of people are at least trying a little bit to get away from the phones. I haven't had many messages or calls from sources. Is this just what dudes do for a normal work day? You don't have to drop everything at all times to make sure that I don't miss a story. It's nice. It's been writing. It just felt my focus has been better. This is all good.
Is it because you're a big-time television star now? Do you have all your assistants taking those phone calls? Do you have your shams?
No, because I'm still down to earth. What was it, Sunday? I got a huge Sicilian pizza, just incredibly large, and I was like, I think I'm gonna eat all this within 24 hours, and I did, and I was very happy. Hate myself for it, but I'm still happy. The duality of man.
Tom, people who normally protest and give proof of how down to earth they are, those are people who are super down to earth. If you really
You're the one accusing me of having assistants.
Yeah. I thought you were wearing a Napoli jersey, and now I'm realizing it's a New Jersey kit.
It's exactly North Jersey SC. Got Satriali's, the Tony Soprano from The Sopranos. That was one of their shops. That was a butcher shop in Sopranos. Shout out Born Offsides UK. They made this delightful kit. Just going full Jersey short time.
So many shout outs in that whole thing. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad we are back together. I'm excited to do this once again. Of course, always breaking news. We're moments away from starting, and the Vancouver Whitecaps just shatter the landscape with a designated player signing in Stuart Armstrong. So huge names moving around for us to cover and get into. And now we are into the final home stretch of the regular season in Major League Soccer. And so every week now, going forward, we're going to reset playoff race, shield race as long as we still can. We'll get into that as we talk about it and some of the other big storylines for you in case you missed anything, what you should be paying attention to as we go forward. And of course, on this show, we got a little national team to talk because we've got the U.S. versus Canada coming up on Saturday. Tom will be, I believe, managing the U.S. for that game. You are available for it?
No. Unavailable. Can't make it, sorry.
Because you won't wear the
Had
night.
to turn it down.
That's why. I would do it. I'm just saying I'm available if U.S. Soccer wants to reach out and hit me up and be like, we need an extra coach. We don't have a full-time coach right now. I would be available. Apparently, Nico Estevez is an assistant.
He is indeed. Back in the fold.
I was unaware of that. Yeah. Back in the fold. So Nico Estevez back to his home roots, of course. Mikey Varis, who we talked about last week, potentially being announced as San Diego's first ever manager. Was he officially announced?
He was not. We're still standing on my reporting.
Got it, which is obviously correct. We did a really fun segment with Bobby Warshaw sort of explaining how this happens. He went through all the available candidates, how a MLS team goes through this process, challenged us to say things that we felt strongly about, which is hard for us. And we ended up both hiring Mikey Varis as well. So if you want to go listen to that, you should go back and listen to it. We titled the segment "Make It Make Sense," and Bobby Warshaw came on to help make it make sense for us. And we'll try and do a little bit of that for you in this one. But let's start in the mailbag. Let's start with John P.A. here, who says, how do you feel about retiring numbers in MLS? I was thinking about how fantastic this crew team is and how iconic Cucho is in that team. I think in the context of the transfer window and signing a Cucho replacement, 5 years from now, are you really going to tell Victor Györkys he can't have the number 9 in Columbus because it's retired? What better ways are there to honor iconic players for a club? I wish it had said Mbappe, but it was still pretty funny anyway.
This was better. It was better as Györkys, 100%. That was excellent comedic writing by John P.A.
Do you have any strong feelings on this? How do you honor players in a sport in which the position the numbers are basically aligned with positions and everyone wears the same number?
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's, in soccer, you can't really retire numbers because it's too iconic. Like, you can't take away the number 9 shirt, the number 7. Like, again, look at, big European clubs for all the stars all the legends that they've had with all their more history, because MLS is just a younger league. Like, you can't take away the number 9 shirt at Real Madrid or the number 7 shirt at Liverpool. You kind of go on down the list, right? Like, so I'm not in favor of retiring a number, even, not because Victor Györkys is going to be upset about it, but just in general, I don't think that you can do that. So for me, it's about having like a ring of honor or like club ambassadors. Like, that's something that, like, so Portland was something that, like, I don't know if anything became official. That's a good point to think about and bring up, but like, Diego Valeri, they had plans to make him a club ambassador. They had plans to do a testimonial friendly with Lanús, all that stuff. We need more of that. I am firmly in favor of all of that. I think that we need to treat our legends better. I think it'll be cool that Dax McCarty hopefully gets a little bit of like a retirement tour here or whatever, like a victory lap at the end of his career here, because he's one of the best players in league history. So like, we need to do more of that, not retiring numbers, but Ring of Honor, club ambassadors, and particularly testimonials. I think that would be a thing that's really cool.
One of the jokes everyone always makes is like, build the statue. That's actually probably the best way to honor a lot of these people, because I think Ring of Honors are cool. Chicago Fire have done it for a while. They've respected their history because they have such a strong one. New York Red Bulls have gotten, I think, pretty active about honoring, especially the Luis Robles, Bradley Wright Phillips, that era now of the team, which was the most successful they've had. DC United, I believe, has done a bit of it as well. It's cool. Then the name sits up there, and it's not connected to a player and all those things.
That's fair.
If you believe someone like Diego Valeri, and I think Diego Chara as well, that are like uniquely positioned in a way in which they are the club, it elevates to the level of statue, and I like the statue idea. Because then you got the statues to go see and like walk around and take pictures with, and it's more of a physical, strong, like, this is what this player means to our club. Yeah. Rather than just the name, which is where the retiring number part comes of like, it always sits there and no one wears it. Like, that has even more, I think, importance than a Ring of Honor. So I let's get the artists involved. Let's get the community rolling. Let's get some metal on the hot fires, and let's get some statues in here. And I think Cucho's probably a year away from being a statue guy. Because if he wins like all the things in the next year and then he leaves, he'll probably have won enough stuff to be in that conversation.
It's still interesting though. So like, even in that scenario, that he'd be here for like 3 seasons, or like 3 full years. Like, it's funny that like you could have such an outside impact on the club. Or one that I've made fun of in the past is like Birmingham City retired Jude Bellingham's number. He was there.
Oh really?
Yeah. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like,
did they retire his number so you can't wear the number anymore?
Like, so that they announced it as that. I don't know if that they've either reversed it or said, okay, this was just a temporary thing. But that is something that they announced when he was sold to Borussia Dortmund. It was like, he had such an impact on it. And it was like, like, he's an awesome player. Like, I feel like it's a bit step too far. And like, I don't want to start raining on parades already, but if it's, I'm trying to think of how this goes bad of like, all right, the Portland Timbers, again, with Valeri and Char. Those are 2 dudes, 1,000% deserve a statue. And then it's like, I don't know, what if Charlotte FC is like, man, we want one too? Who completely, and then just like, you know what I mean? Like, what?
Do not put the Brant Bronico statue up right now.
I'm at least a little bit worried that there's going to be one where we're like,
it gets out of control.
What are we doing here?
Yeah,
Who's
kind of like
showing up?
rivalry, kind of like how we name things rivalries in Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And everything has to be a rivalry. Well, you do get in tough spots. Like if you're TFC, you got Javinko, you're putting up a Josie one, you're putting up a Michael Bradley one. Are you putting up more than that? Are you adding more to that? So yeah, you're right. It could get out of hand pretty quickly. At the same time, you're funding the artistic community. So like it's a win-win in all those situations.
No, you just had the checkmate there. There's nothing I can push back on that. Well done, guys. Well done.
Have you seen the Malik Neighbors stuff?
That he got the jersey number 1. I didn't even know that the jersey number 1. I'm a Giants fan. I did not know the jersey number 1 was retired. I wasn't super locked into all of the retired numbers.
The players
It's like 1934.
played 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to wear the jersey. And I got into a car on Friday because I had to drive to a wedding. And obviously, the first thing I do when I get in a car is put on Sports Talk Radio because I never listen to it. And I'm in a car and I'm stoked. And immediately, first caller in, this guy screaming at the host. It is disrespectful that he even asked, who does this rookie think he is? And the host screaming back at the guy, going, what are you talking about? Can you name the guy? Name a single stat of his. The family okayed it. The family okayed it. And I was like, oh, man, I am back. So I look forward to us on Soccer Wise in 20 years having some screaming debate because the best player on the planet at 13 years old signing with an MLS team is not allowed to wear the jersey they want because we've retired Zarek Valentine's number at the Portland Timbers. Shout out to Zarek, one of the best in MLS. So this is a great question. Thank you, John P.A. For this one, let's dig into the weekend. So we're going to start every week with our best match of the weekend, which has nothing to do with any standings or anything. It's what we enjoyed. And then we'll go into biggest wins for the playoff push. We'll reset the playoff race, and then we'll go to biggest win for the Shield race as well. And then we've got some other categories in there that we will go into. We're starting with best match. And my question is there a limit to the amount of times I can put a specific team's matches in this category?
No, there's no limit. It's all vibes, so we get to do whatever we want. I mean, it'll be a little silly if it's every single week, but, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and I'll be sure to keep you in check.
Well, I'm going to say Columbus then, who we have celebrated quite a lot over the last few weeks on this show. I said coming into the game, I thought NYCFC played them the best of any team at Leagues Cup. You saw a lot of that again in this game. You saw NYCFC take an early lead, dominate possession in the first half in Columbus, which is impressive to do. Fight back, get the goal off the blown set piece play from Columbus for Mounsef Bakrar to go coast to coast and bang a goal somehow. Against all odds, he gets a goal. And then you have two goals in stoppage time and a red card to clean this one off. A 4-2 win for Columbus. Come from behind once and then react to the goal late twice. And just like an open and fun soccer game. And this is the type of games I want to watch. It wasn't my only one on the list because I was prepared if you were going to put me on a limits restriction, but it was my favorite match of the weekend.
Yeah, that game was great and really important. Again, I think that I'm going to talk about this in another little subcategory in a couple minutes. So I'll save my thoughts, but it was very important in terms of the Supporters Shield race and everything else. So the Crew finding a way. This could have been a classic letdown game. Like they rotated the team, figuratively hungover. Who knows if they were literally hungover when they beat the Philadelphia Union in a really good game. So it's like, oh, this is going to be the trap game. They come back home. They just beat NYCFC recently. Now everybody's rested to start. We just did it with our backups, and we don't lose at home, all this stuff. And then kind of when NYCFC scored early and then scored to tie it up like later, it's like, oh, yeah, like this is where a team drops points. And then, as you said, the Columbus Crew came back and picked up all 3 points. For me, I'm going to go out west. The Dallas-Colorado game was pretty bonkers. That was a lot of fun. It ends 3-2 Colorado Rapids. The game was in Dallas. We got a 90+3 game winner from Darren Yappy. I believe that's his third goal now since the summer. So that was really awesome. Again, the 18-year-old academy product, and Hafa Nuvaru kind of tied it up a little bit before that. So this was, I thought, a really fun game.
By the way, I didn't check the chat before we moved off the retired numbers. There's a lot of good info in there. There are retired numbers. For example, Megan Rapinoe's number was retired last week. When I heard the convo about her number being retired, I disconnected the actual fact that no one can wear the number anymore from like the honor. So it does exist in soccer. Just throwing that out there for anyone as we move on. As I pull us back to then come back forward. Colorado continuing to roll.
Yep.
I don't know that I I don't know that I had any big expectations for them coming out of Leagues Cup. I said so many times, like the season's already been an accomplishment that I don't know that I really set any standards on like what we need to see from them going forward. And that's why something like this was also huge for them. And like they're going to continue to put themselves in a home playoff spot. That's pretty big.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that has to be the updated goal for the season. Again, it doesn't make it a bad season if they finish fifth, but like I think that they are significantly better than Vancouver. Vancouver are the team that's in fifth. Portland sixth, Houston seventh, Seattle eighth. Like I just think the Colorado Rapids are the best team out of that group, and it would be unfortunate and disappointing if they did not get that fourth spot. We'll see how kind of the season evolves. Again, they're 3 points up on Vancouver. Vancouver have a couple games in hand, and I could definitely see them overtaking the Rapids, but I just think that the Rapids are a better team, and that has to be the goal to finish in fourth for the rest of the season. Look, they're only 3 points behind Salt Lake and LAFC, so like that's like a possibility, and I guarantee that those are their ambitions. Why can't we catch them, right? But like a realistic goal hanging on the fourth here.
To be clear, they're 3 points behind LAFC with 2 games more played because LAFC have less games played. But you are 100% right in like if they are able to beat out RSL this year and with all the stuff they've already done, that would be massive. And you would love a situation where if you get stuck against RSL in the playoffs, you have home field advantage, whatever round it is and whatever goes on. So that would be massive for this team. Let's go into the playoff push because as you sort of went down that list, we start to get closer to the line. We've got multiple lines in Major League Soccer because everyone gets a participation trophy and everyone wins. So, of course, 9 teams make the playoffs. 8 and 9 play in a play-in match to make the actual postseason. And then you've got 5 through 7 who automatically qualify and will be going on the road in the first round, and then 1 through 4 after that one. A couple big results on the line for these playoff teams. So right now, sitting here, you've got Seattle in 8th place in the West, Minnesota in 9th place, Austin have dropped down to 10th, and Dallas sit right behind them in 11th. And I think your result was from the Western Conference of the biggest win for a playoff push team.
Yeah, the Portland Timbers beating Seattle Sounders 1-0. Again, keeping a clean sheet while playing 2 actual fullbacks instead of having to add another center back out there. Again, no Joseph Mora, no Jonathan Rodriguez. Again, you're playing your rivals. Just an awesome result for the Portland Timbers. I don't think that they were in danger of not making the playoffs. So I'm kind of rejecting the premise here, but I'd much rather talk about the Timbers trying to push for seeding and the Timbers looking like, okay, that was an adult serious performance that maybe you can win around in the playoffs. And let's see how this defensive unit continues evolving as the season goes on, rather than being like, well, Dallas lost. Now they're 3 points below the line. Who cares? Dallas, Austin, I think those teams, even if they get in as the 9, they're either going to lose in the play-in round or get smacked in the first round of the best of 3. So for me, I'd rather spend my time talking about this Timbers-Seattle game.
I think that's fair. We have some other categories coming up that I'm going to drop this game in as well. But this was as you said, this was a massive performance and result for Portland. I think the two sides of that, of the way they played with the players that were missing against their rival, pushes it into this conversation as well. And a huge moment for this Timbers team that is kind of sitting in a weird spot. I thought it was interesting. Phil Neville, did you hear that? He made a comment coming out of the St. Louis game saying most people are saying this is 2 points dropped for us. I see it as a point gained. It's a game in which we wouldn't have come back and gotten the result in the past, and a game that we weren't capable of getting a result out of. And we think these 2 matches are home games against good teams, and if we come out with 4 points, it's a victory. It is the spin zone from Phil Neville. It is spinning hard.
On one hand, yeah, coming back from behind against St. Louis, you're right. There is something to be said about that. That's not the top line takeaway. You gave up 4 goals at home to St. Louis, who are a better team now than they were before the window, but St. Louis is still second to last in the Western Conference, right? So yeah, sure, technically, but I think 4 points was the minimum from this swing for those 2 games, right?
You just would have thought the 4 points would have come flipped. Win over St. Louis, draw Seattle.
Yeah, but I think the victory lap we tied St. Louis at home 4-4, and I told you I was right. I think that's a weird victory lap.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But Phil Neville always working. I'm going to go to the Eastern Conference. So in the Eastern Conference right now, Charlotte sit in 6th on 38 points. Orlando sitting 7th on 37th. Toronto and Atlanta are the two play-in teams. Toronto 33 points, Atlanta 31. Then just below the line, 1 point behind, is the Philadelphia Union. DC United sit 2 points behind the line, and then a 2-point gap down to Montreal after that. And I'm going to say Atlanta are the team, in my mind, that had the biggest win for the playoff push this weekend. They go on the road to, I believe it was a 55,000 person crowd in Charlotte. They get the victory 1-0 against Charlotte, a game that they were very good in and deserved to win. This was not, even though the goal, if you go watch the highlights and you say, Fortune, a long strike, not a ton of pressure on him, sneaks it in, that goal was probably their worst chance over the course of that stretch of time for this Atlanta team. And they get Moranchuk into the group. They go on the road. They get a huge victory. And this is an Atlanta team then that sees the two teams behind them get victories this weekend in Philadelphia, going to the Red Bulls, which is arguably, I think, the other result you could put in here. And then DC United going to Toronto. So for Atlanta, when you look at their schedule, when you look at who they have to play, they've got one of the toughest schedules in this groupings of teams. It is going to be all about keeping the teams behind them away. I don't think they're going to rise up the standings. I don't think they're going to make a run for a home game. They have to maintain and tread water, and this was a unexpected result to say,
Yeah.
now you have a little more breathing room. Now if you make a mistake somewhere else, okay, you could look at these 3 points and say they swap for each other and that they fit in there. So a huge result for them, and as I said, a really big performance. I mentioned Moranchuk getting his first start for this team. Pep Biel also got his first start for Charlotte. Let me ask you this off one game. Who would you rather have building a roster, Pep Biel or Moranchuk?
Is this a serious question?
It is a serious question.
This isn't. Okay. Miranchuk, very easily. Miranchuk has a much higher pedigree, much longer resume. He's still in his prime as well. And there's a reason why he was on the team that won the Europa League last year. So I think this is very comprehensively Alexei Miranchuk.
So 3 days ago, I would have blindly agreed with you and said, absolutely, let's do it. I got a taste of Pep Biel, though, and I'm telling you, I'm going back for seconds right now. I am interested for sure. Obviously, the fact that his team lost to the other guy's team at home is like not a super positive for my takes and what I thought I saw, but he was lively. He was the center of the game. He was constantly getting touches. He was constantly moving the game around to make everyone else's life easier. And like, so one, for Charlotte, it's huge for them to have a guy who wants this because they've never had a player like this in their entire time. And somehow Swiderski looked worse with all of it, which is bizarre. But I thought Vargas and Abada looked really good in this game. Love the addition. Love the signing. I just want to say that. Okay. But Moranchuk floated in this game and kind of like chills and lets the game sort of develop around him. Now he's new and he has to get into it. But I like the aggressive play of Pep Biel. And so I'm a Bielsa-lite. Boom.
So look, both things have, like, I think that this is going to work out as a good signing for Charlotte as well. Pep Biel, well, unfortunate that he cannot be bought down if they choose to keep him. So that's going to be, I think, a storyline for the rest of the season on even if he's pretty good, what do you do at the end of the season? But this is a profile that they needed. You're right, they haven't had this profile. Gosh, you're talking about touches, you're talking about he goes and finds the game, and you're saying that he was all over the ball and Miranchuk was drifting away. Pep Biel had 37 touches.
Yeah.
Miranchuk had 62. So that's not a small margin.
No way.
That's not a small margin.
There's no way that is true.
42 passes completed to 24. It's not close.
Any of this. Are you just a stats
Games
guy,
I played
man?
in a spreadsheet, mate.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't believe that was right. And like I
didn't
was one of the
see
games
that at all.
That was one of the games that I didn't get to watch the 90 minutes of because there's 100 games at 7:30. So I called Devin Kerr, who was calling that game for Apple TV. And his kind of analysis on both those players is that, Biel was trying to do stuff, but like maybe, wasn't quite coming off. They're still trying to figure out how to adapt to each other in that attack. And same thing with Miranchuk, except that his style was rubbing off more on the Atlanta United players and that everybody seemed more calm and they were passing the ball and being more patient and keeping control of the game and the ball. And then another person who I farmed out asked how it was, J. Sam Jones, the excellent MLSsoccer.com daily newsletter writer. He was telling me, he's like, I think that there's a strong possibility that the team is better off with Miranchuk than Almada because of the play style and the effect it'll have on the rest of the team. Not to suggest that, or not saying that Miranchuk is definitely a better player than Almada, but just that this style is probably going to be more beneficial for the team.
It felt like Saba was more engaged and involved because of that style of like quick passing, connection on the top. Now, I will say this. I will not be defeated by the stats nerds. I will not be run down by the analytics community led by Tom Bogert as usual, riding in on a Texas Instrument calculator, demanding that everyone shoot 3-pointers on every single play of the game. So I'm not going to let you spin me, but I think that's an interesting thing to have heard. And I look forward to watching the rest of this as we go along. Let's jump into the Shield race. So, in the Shield race in Major League Soccer right now, I don't know if you've heard of them. Inter Miami lead the Shield race right now. They're on 59 points with 27 games played, 2.19 points per game. That is the lead in the Eastern Conference and the lead in the Shield race. LA Galaxy right now lead the Western Conference on 52 points, but they have played 28 games. So they are on 1.86 per game. LAFC are better on points per game. They've only played 25 matches. They are 5 points behind the Galaxy on 47 points, but slightly ahead on 1.8 points per game. And then in the East, you have the next two teams, Cincinnati on 51 points, 27 games played, and then Columbus, 49 points, only 25 matches played for them as well because of Leagues Cup and CONCACAF and all the run. Them and LAFC have the most games to make up. Tom, starting this conversation, are all of those teams in the Shield race when I reset this every week, or should I start ignoring some of these teams that I just said?
Ignoring some of the teams you just said. For me, it's a 2-team race at this point, and the only reason that I think it's a 2-team race is because of all of the respect that we have for the Columbus Crew. And I even think that you could have pushed back on it if they didn't get a late winner against NYCFC this weekend. So as you say with the numbers, like again, I'm just framing this around 2 teams because I don't think the other ones have a chance to catch into Miami. Miami are 10 points ahead of the Crew. Crew have 2 games in hand. If the Crew win both of those games, which is not a guarantee, they're 4 back, and they do play into Miami down the stretch for the rest of the season. Miami have won 8 of their last 9 games without Lionel Messi. Messi is very likely to be back in 2 weeks when they return to play. He's back into training right now, so it's very fair to assume that he's going to be playing. Like, they're only going to get better. And the only reason that we're not like, oh, it's over, like, is because one of the teams chasing him is the Columbus Crew, and we have so much respect for them. So I think this is getting closer to calling it. We're not there yet. And, like, again, I'll repeat myself that, like, this isn't because of, like, oh, well, they're only X amount of points behind. It's because of the Crew. Because, like, as you said, the Galaxy, LAFC, they might have, like, LAFC, I don't think have the same points per game as the Crew, but, right, like, you could have made the argument that, oh, they're still in the race. I just don't think that they're good enough to make up this distance.
Okay. I think you're right. I don't know that I would have said that on Friday, but now in going into the biggest results of the weekend, both of the LA teams tripped on themselves, and probably that was the only ground they had, especially LAFC playing at home, even though it was against a really good Houston team. So LAFC lost 2-0 at home to Houston. They obviously played the Leagues Cup final last Sunday. Then they went to Seattle and won the US Open Cup semifinal on Wednesday. Then they came home on Saturday to play Houston. Slightly rotated, but again, a very strong squad for this team. Giroud, it seems like, picked up a little bit of a knock. Bogusz got the start up top. Aaron Long stepped into the back line once again. It looks like Jesus Murillo is going to be out for a little bit, and we'll talk about that coming up in Defensive Player of the Year stuff in just a moment. And then Houston throttled them in LA, and it was a lot of the things Houston are always going to try and do, but Ezequiel Ponce was really good in this game. He gets the opening goal off a set piece, but he gives them an outlet when they try and build out. When LAFC would press high, they had an outlet to dump it into him. and then let the center midfielders run off them. That was a predictable outlet. That was a physically dominant one. And then you see his individual quality, his connection with Ache, the way he likes to play. He looks like a really good addition. LAFC were messy in their transition moments, the ways you'd expect them to kill Houston. They just weren't clean in that first ball out. Bouanga was not as dangerous or aggressive as what you'd like to see. This was a huge result for Houston, and it probably drops LAFC out of the competition for this.
Yeah, and another, like, again, Houston played excellent. Like, that was a really important performance for the Houston Dynamo, because when you go back to the Western Conference Final last year, like, they had a similar game plan, right? Like, this is their game model. They want to have the ball. They want to pull you apart. They want to beat you with the ball the same way that, say, the Columbus Crew are trying to. Ryan Hollingshead, after that game, was doing interviews and was like, yeah, they're not good enough to beat us with the ball. We want you to have the ball because we're more dangerous on the count. Like, more or less saying that, like, we weren't in trouble at any point just giving them the ball because we don't think that they could break us down. Well, they did this game. And they had an individual moment of brilliance from Lawrence Anali, and he's been awesome. I had, like, you never exactly know how U22 initiative signings are going to fare, particularly immediately. This dude hit the ground sprinting, and it looks like he's suffered a severe injury. That's kind of the words that's coming out of Houston right now, that they think it's a very long-term injury, which absolutely sucks because he's been so much fun. So first and foremost for the player, like that, it's just, particularly after, like, the high of scoring that goal against LAFC to then end the game with a potentially severe injury. And then for the Houston Dynamo, like, Nelson Quinones, took him a little while to really adapt to this team. He was a lot of fun down the stretch last year. And then he suffers a season-ending injury in preseason to an already very thin attacking unit. They kind of survive and advance throughout the beginning of the season, do enough to stay where they are in the standings, and then, okay, we're just going to build in the summer. Ponce is ready to go, debuts on the first day. Lawrence Anali, they had that deal done. They couldn't announce it until MLS announced the roster rule changes. So they were ahead of all of this. They did everything right. And Lawrence Anali, Ponce, they both look like really, really good players. And Ponce in particular being more of like a bonus just because of the U22 initiative versus signing it in prime DP number 9. And so they've done everything right here. And still, it doesn't matter sometimes. And that's just really cruel.
It sucks. So Anale just posted on Instagram a few minutes ago saying, "It's hard, but I will be back. Thank you for all the supportive messages. They help me a lot." Ben Olsen post-game said, "There's a cloud over this win. We're hoping to hear better news, but it seems like his knee's going to be done for the year." So as you said, it was a real high and low for Houston because they made the moves to get over the hump they couldn't get over last year. Those were the exact moves that got them over the hump against that team in the same building where they were stopped in the Western Conference Finals, and then to lose one of the guys moments later is brutal for this team. So LAFC, we're putting them out of the Supporters Shield race. Houston, a massive victory. A massive victory, by the way, for them in playoff positioning because they still need to lock their spot in. The other is the LA Galaxy. Went to St. Louis, lost 2-1. I will start by saying St. Louis were really fun in this game. I have been intoxicated by the new St. Louis team under Hackworth with the new addings. Teutschert gets a goal in this one. Hartle gets a goal in this one. Betcher's playing well. Klaus came back and was available for them, came off the bench and helped them see out the game. This is a team that looks completely different from who they were. There's balance to the way they play now. They sit in kind of a mid-block most of the time. Then they go and press. They create the first goal. Then they sit off a little bit, but they never let the Galaxy get too much possession. There weren't too many moments where they were suffocating. They had enough triggers to get themselves out of their defensive third and go and play a little bit and push the game. And the atmosphere in the crowd was awesome for this one. St. Louis jumping up the watchability rankings, which we did a week or two ago. And I think they'll be one of those outliers of like, you're not watching them because of playoff standings. You're watching them because they're fun every week going forward. And then the Galaxy, as fun as I'm talking about St. Louis, this is the second worst team in the conference. You're going to push for a Supporters Shield. You can't drop points in a game like this, even if it's on the road. They didn't have Ricky Puig. They started Marco Royce. I almost said Marcel Hartle there. They started Marco Royce in this game as the 10, and they could not find a ton of attacking impetus in this one. They were not dangerous. They weren't able to break lines consistently with St. Louis, and they lost 2-1 on the road.
I get why they're playing Joseph Paintsville up top sometimes, and like you're gonna have to do different variations to try to keep everybody happy in terms of minutes. But I absolutely hate when Paintsel is playing as a 9. Like it's just clear that he's better as a winger. And again, like I understand to try to get all of these players on this is better than having him on the bench for Miguel Barry or something, right? Like I get it, but like these are big questions for the Galaxy going down the end of the season. Like somebody, like multiple players are gonna be unhappy to be on the bench for a playoff game, and like Dejan Jovic, if he's fit, should be starting as a 9. He just fits better. And then, like, I don't know how you pick 3 between, Fagundes, Ricky Puig, Peck, Paintsel, and Royce, but, like, you're just going to have to. And it is, like, I don't think that you can kind of shoehorn Paintsel as a 9 again. And again, maybe, like, I'll be wrong, and this is what the end of the regular season is for. Like, when we're talking about, I don't think that they're in the Shield race, so this is the time to figure it out and fine-tune it. But I don't love it. St. Louis, good for them for the win. It is only their second win since May 12th, which is a wild thing to say. And an even more wild thing to say, I'm not ready to say that they're dead and buried for the playoffs. I was flirting with whether I was, like, I just assumed so. And then I was like, let me just double check their schedule and make sure. They have 2 games against Minnesota. Minnesota is the team that's in 9th that they're chasing. Mm-hmm. They're 9 points behind them. That's still very steep, but I would not be surprised if they win both of those games. They also play Kansas City again. They play at San Jose. So the schedule is pretty soft, and soft in the way that they're playing 2 of the teams. They have 3 games against teams that are directly in front of them for the playoffs. Yeah. So I'm not ready to completely rule them out, but like obviously margin for error is very slim. 9 points below the drop with 7 games left or whatever.
It's funny because the model for this would be what SKC did last year. And when SKC did it last year, everyone kind of leaned on, well, we've seen this team do it before. So it's like not shocking, right? They kind of reverted to what we expected. Now, St. Louis has had 1 year in Major League Soccer. They won the Western Conference, obviously at a lower number than normal, but they still won the Western Conference.
Right.
And then it was, would they revert to the mean? They did this year, and they've dropped all the way down. So if they revert back to what they were last year with this added talent and the changing coach and all of this, you could see them make a run. I think the part that's hard is jumping all these teams.
Yes.
You mentioned they play a lot of them, and like Austin were lifeless this weekend. It was scary to watch that Austin performance because I think we've talked about Josh Wolf a bit. It felt like a team that gave up on their coach in that game. Dallas again drops a big result. So like when you're looking to make the playoffs, you're going against teams that don't get results consistently. Right. That's why they are where they are. I will accept the St. Louis life support that you are providing right now, and I will continue to keep them in our playoff push, which means you're scaling our Western Conference playoff push every week now down to 13th place. Well, St. Louis.
But that's the thing, and like you can tell me this hypocrisy, I disagree. But like I said, Kansas City, I think that they're cooked. They're done. Like I just don't think that they're good. So usually, like you could say, oh, it's MLS, man, anything can happen, it'd be crazy. But like these teams down here are bad. But I think St. Louis are solid now after their summer transfer window. So like I wouldn't say that there's 13 teams still alive. But like again, I think that they are on life support for this. But like again, Dallas are only 3 points behind. Hey, maybe Ferreira and Musa get healthy, but like I just don't see them jumping over, right? Like so, it's selective for me at this stage.
SKC, they play at Red Bulls, they play at Seattle, and then they play the Rapids and Minnesota. But that is, I believe, either side of the Open Cup final. So they have a tough schedule going through, and I don't think it's wrong to say that you see them differently than you see this St. Louis team, also because of momentum. At this point of the season. All right. I love it. On the Galaxy side, I agree with you. I think Greg Vanney agrees with you. Like, he brought Miguel Barry in off the bench at halftime. They scored 50 seconds later. Jovic just hasn't been healthy. When Jovic is healthy, or if he is ever healthy, I think it'll be the setup you said. Also, Ricky Puig not being available this weekend. I would be shocked if all 4 of those guys are available most of the time. And so, like, you're probably in a situation where you're not really having to make that decision. I was underwhelmed by Royce in this game. He is going to take some time to get up to speed. Reminder, like this was his off season. So this is technically his second game of the year coming off of last season. So he's going to have to figure things out. And if the Galaxy want to stay competitive at the top of the West, he's going to have to figure it out quickly. So those 3 segments, we're going to do them for you every single week coming forward. Now, let's add a few more in here. You wanted to talk bounce back win of the weekend. I will start then and say the Philadelphia Union. They lost to Columbus Crew 2 midweek in a moment where it felt like a chance for them to make a playoff push. And then they come back and they go to the Red Bulls and they get a 2-0 victory. Ty Baribo continues to score goals. They've now added a few more internationals, which is pretty impressive for what we thought they were going to do over the course of this summer window. And Philadelphia stay alive. They're only 1 point out of the playoffs right now. I would not have guessed that a week ago when they when they lost at home to a Columbus team that, as you mentioned, was fairly probably hungover going into that game.
Yeah, and Andre Blake was excellent again, and I think that we're just going to keep saying the same things that we did during the Leagues Cup run. Like, Andre Blake is capital B back, and that's the margins that this team needs to survive. And again, when you have Ty Baribo scoring goals, like, it's as, like, I don't want to be too reductive, but I think it's as simple as in May, they were getting nothing in their defensive third and their attacking third. Like, Andre Blake was out, and in their attacking third, like, Ty Baribo was stapled to the bench, and they weren't getting much. So, like,
well, they'll win that midfield circle.
Yeah, and like it'll be a dogfight, and then it's like, oh, like there's a deflected shot that went through the goalkeeper's hands, and it's like, all right, this is weird for a Philadelphia Union team. So like this is a good team, just straight up, as long as Andre Blake is Andre Blake, which I think he's proven. Yes, he is indeed, and Ty Baribo's still scoring goals. Like this seems sustainable, maybe not to the exact levels of like again both those players played really really well against the Red Bulls. Ty Baribo's miss from 2 yards out in an empty net, notwithstanding. The game was already 2-0. That can be swept under the rug.
Gotta leave something on the table. It's Bradley Wright Phillips style, right? Set the goal scoring record, and Henri kept talking about all the goals he could have scored. You gotta leave them coming wanting more.
And then so for me, my who's back of the week, FC Cincinnati, 4-1 win at home against a reeling CF Montreal team. Cincinnati did not have Lucho Acosta. They didn't matter because they have Luca Oriano scoring goals from his own half yet again. And this is their first win. They snapped a 4-game losing streak, which dated back to pre-Leagues Cup. So this was an important win, one that they absolutely needed, should have had. This would have been a disaster to lose to this Montreal team with how much that they've been struggling at home. No Lucho Acosta, doesn't matter. This was a good get-right game, and now they play the Columbus Crew next week, or their next game, sorry. That's going to be this was very, very important to go into the international break, beating a team that they absolutely should have beaten.
Yeah, Tom mentioned there, international break coming up. Not every MLS team takes off, but some do. So for some of these teams, they have 13 days off now between MLS games, 11 days off between MLS games. Other teams will play this weekend. We'll obviously preview the weekend coming up on Thursday. We'll talk all about it. We'll recap it next week as well. But for a lot of these teams, that's why we're not like, oh, next game, this is important, because that's in like an eternity in soccer world time. So we are not even there yet. As you said, huge result for this Cincinnati team over the course of the weekend. That 4-1 victory. That is who's back. Who's back out? Who are you done on? Who are you giving up on?
Who's out? Like, again, this could have been the inverse of this for Montreal, but I'll save them for right now. I'm going to go with Nashville. They lost 3-0 to Orlando City. This is, I believe, 7 or 8 losses in a row for Nashville. They have not scored a goal in MLS play since July 13th. It is September 3rd. The summer's over. They haven't won in MLS since June 23rd. Like, very, very bad for Nashville SC right now, even after BJ Callahan took over during Leagues Cup in July. So he's had plenty of time now in the training ground. They still have the pieces, the foundational pieces of a team that made the playoffs in each of their first 4 seasons. So they've absolutely turned into a death spiral, and I don't see them climbing out.
That's a hard one to top. It's a hard one.
To be fair, yeah, you should have went with Montreal.
you picked the big one. I probably could have gone with Montreal. I'm going with TFC on this one. They lost 3-1 at home at DC United. They didn't have Bernadeschi. They still were horrendous. It didn't really matter. They gave up self-inflicted goals on one end. They make mistakes playing out of the back. They struggle 1v1 defending. The finishing wasn't there at a high level as well. I was a little confused by the setup, quite honestly, in watching this team. They're like trying to rotate the wingbacks inside and play as central midfielders and all of that. They're just really weak in central midfield, and they're easy to play through. If you're saying that coming out of a DC United game, like, that's tough. If Jared Stroud's running the game on you, that's like a tough reality to live in. And that has nothing to do with getting Bernadeschi back, because he's not going to assist you in that part of the field. He's not going to work off the ball and come back and help in any way at all. So I think this is a TFC team. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make the playoffs, is how I feel right now. It also feels like there's some question marks around the group in terms of the like drone stuff that is not being talked about, but like is living there and being dealt with. And I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if this group kind of gave up in a little bit going forward. And this kind of felt like that first result. And shout out to DC for taking care of business and getting it done. One of the nicest set piece goals you will ever see for Martin Rodriguez. And a team that continues to sort of roll out the same pieces, but sometimes get different results out of it. Matty Patola, I thought, was good in this one as well. But as I said, it's an easy midfield to deal with. So maybe that's more why than what I saw. And looking forward to watching more of this DC group. I thought at least they came out on the front foot and they played aggressive the entire game. They made aggressive subs. They tried to win, even on the road. And I think they could deserve a shout out for that in this one. Let's finish up this section with a question from Clady Troyer from the mailbag, who says, as we head down the final stretch of the MLS season, which players make up the pool of Defensive Player of the Year contenders? Attacking and goalkeeping stats seem easier to decipher, so it's more straightforward to get a read on the contenders for the other awards, but gauging defenders feels more subjective. Who deserves recognition here? So, of course, your question's correct here in that no one understands who the best defenders are, and someone undeserving either gets voted in or wins every time, and someone deserving gets left out of the conversation. It is normally just to help you gauge who will win, not just who we think is best. It will normally be a center back. It won't be a fullback. And it will normally be one from one of the top 4 to 5 defensive teams statistically in the league.
Yeah. So the Defensive Player of the Year, like all of these awards, narrative driven, right? Like, so that's one place to start. Like, these are people who are voting on them. And as Goss said, normally it just comes from, pick the best center back on one of the best defensive teams, right? You look in the past, Walker Zimmerman, that's how he won it several times. Aaron Long with the Red Bulls, and he won it, I'm kind of struggling to remember the list of winners for this award, but like that's usually a safe bet to make for Defensive Player of the Year. So with that being said, and you and I trying to narrow down some suggestions, like Adilson Milanda is the first one that I came up with. He plays for Charlotte, who are one of the best defensive teams in the league. So there's that. He's, I think, unquestionably, now that Ream's there, it's a little bit different, but since the beginning of the season, unquestionably the best center back on that team, which cost, Ymar and Jackson Reagan in the past, and that they split votes. Aaron Long and Tim Parker, that was a little bit difficult to split when it was the Red Bulls, right? Like, so not just, it's like Zimmerman was great because he's clearly the dominant center back on that team. And so when Nashville were the best defensive team in the league, it's like obviously Walker Zimmerman's going to win this award, right? Like, so that's another caveat to add to this, that like teams that have 2 really good center backs that are difficult to distinguish, like they're going to split votes, and that's going to hurt. Like even but like Jacob Glesnes ended up winning it in the past, but Jack Elliott, I don't even think he got on the ballot because they weren't allowed to nominate more than 2, and they put Kai Wagner on it, right? Like, so that helped to take away the split. That being said, Milanda also has the narrative because rising young talent in this league, this Charlotte team is a very big, pleasant surprise in the league. I don't think anybody expected them to be this good or this solid defensively. So Dean Smith takes a lot of credit, the defensive unit as a whole, but Milanda, I think, is the person that would be the beneficiary of this in this season. Another couple suggestions, Mikael, Houston Dynamo, he's been really good. This is low-key one of the best stories of how a team, like he started with their second team. That was where he was loaned there as a bit of an older player. I think he was 21, and like that's old by MLS Next Pro standards of like, oh, is this kid gonna make it or not? He got into the first team, got a starting spot. He's been really good. Ymar in Seattle, like Seattle are one of the best defensive teams in the league. He's someone, but like I don't think that they're gonna finish high enough in the standings for him to really get the votes here. And then LAFC are have the best expected goals against, and their dominant center back is Murillo. And then I think that we both like Noah for the New York Red Bulls. But again, like, I don't know how much distinguishing there is between him and Sean Nealis in terms of who's more important to this defensive unit. So they might split votes there. What do you think about those 5?
I think that's a good group to come from. And I think my guess is my vote will be coming out of that group. Murillo, I mentioned, got hurt. I believe it was against Seattle, or was it at the end of the game against Columbus? One of the two. If he's out for a little bit of a stretch, or that team falls off, he could be in a dangerous spot. Although, in fairness, this is a voted on category, and I don't know how many people will have seen Mikael play by the end of the year. So Murillo might end up being...
Honest to God, if you polled like the average like national writer or somebody who's voting on this, or like I don't know. Well, I was gonna say it's like the captain of an Eastern Conference team. Have you watched the Houston Dynamo more or LAFC? It's probably LAFC because like players vote on this as well and like managers and coaches. So that shouldn't be part of it. But God, you're right to bring that up. Like that is absolutely part of these votes. And I try really, really hard to not let it be and to try to use our platform to push out any information that we can. But like it's just is like brother. Messi got how many votes for newcomer of the year last year? He played like 300 minutes in MLS.
Well, that's
like,
why I was going to say
happens.
The other broken one is Jordi Alba is probably going to lead defenders in assists and goals. And Inter Miami are like the 12th best defense in the league, 13th. They are nowhere near this conversation.
That would be a joke. That would be a joke.
You want to bet me right now?
I'm not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if that happens, that'll be a joke.
I know. And I was hoping for a little bit of Freach Chang on the side of that joke from you in that whole bet. All the names you said, though, I think are right. I voted for Malanda 2200 on the 2222 list. Was it last year or 2 years ago at this point? Would have been last year, right?
Might have been 2 years ago. So I don't think he wasn't eligible by like a matter of like a week last year.
So 2 years ago, I voted for him. I love his potential. I love what he does. If he were to win Defensive Player of the Year, I think it would be the worst winner that we'd had in terms of his ability to defend today. Like he is still a weakness at times 1v1. He still loses a ton of battles, and that is partially because he's young and because he's still learning. But like if that was the case, I would find that really interesting. I'm also happy to be proven wrong over the last 10 games to see what he does and what he adds. I would say if I was building a team, I would probably take Mikhail first of all these players. Ymar would probably be up there as well of these two. I have voted Ymar like 2 years in a row. I'm not going to vote him this year based off what I'm seeing. He's never going to win it. So I can give up with him on that as well. One of the other names I will add in here is Veselinovic at Vancouver. He has consistently been the one that keeps that back 3 to 5 together.
Good shout.
And keeps things really clean. They are one of the better defensive teams. If we think Mikhail's not going to win it because people are watching, Veselinovic's not going to win it either.
That's a good shout. I think I was remiss to not have him on that list. And then also Columbus Crew have one of the better expected goals against and goals against in the league. So, but like I think that goes down to splitting votes. Like between like Rudy Camacho would probably be the guy, particularly for Defender of the Year over Steven Moreira. But like, are we sure that Rudy Camacho is more important, a better defender than Steven Moreira? Like, I think that both of them could be in this conversation, but like I think that they're going to split votes. Plus, like, there's going to be fatigue at some point on the Columbus Crew. Like, all right, you've got Leagues Cup, you're going to play in the Campeones Cup, reigning MLS Cup champs. Like, we're talking about Kuchar all the time, Wilfred Nancy. Maybe you don't get Defender of the Year as well. Okay, relax.
I think Camacho will get in there. I forgot about that name. I think Camacho will end up being a finalist.
But like what I would say is that like their best strength defensively is that they have the ball for 70% of the game, and the game is played in the attacking third. So like I don't know. So I don't know if that would help them with the narrative side of things. Like I'd rather proper center back lad be winning this award for kicking people. But to each their own. That's the beauty of the voting process and democracy.
That is the beauty of democracy, and you forgot Veselinovic, so now I'm going to give you a full segment to celebrate the Vancouver Whitecaps and all things them so that you can make up for that. As I said, they went down to Austin. They got a 1-0 win this weekend. They were phenomenal in this game. They dominated possession. Gauld scores at the end of the first half. It gets called off.
God.
They come back. What?
They have 51% possession.
In the first half, there was a point they were at 66%.
Cool.
Against Austin, who want the ball. They went and dominated the game. Also, game states, if you're leading 1-0 on the road, I would hope you don't have more possession for the sake of the other team.
What?
There was, I'm pretty sure at the end of the first half,
sorry.
66.
Whatever. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It's unraveling. Go on.
You're the stats guy. And then off the back of that, they signed a designated player, Stuart Armstrong, 32-year-old attacking player. He is Scottish. He signed a deal through 2026. He has spent the last 6 years with Southampton, 5 years in the Premier League, I think, and 1 year in the Championship. Overall, 191 appearances for Southampton. He's got 51 caps for Scotland. He started in 2 of the 3 group stage games in the 2021 Euros, and then he appeared once in the most recent Euros for Scotland, who, as I have said, are the worst international team to watch on the planet. In the most recent season, 2023-24, in the Champo, he finished with 6 goals, 7 assists in 42 appearances overall. He got injured in April, didn't play again, and then was released at the end of the year. I assume, Tom, that's why he's eligible right now, is because he's a free agent.
Yeah. And another tidbit, this came up in the Discord, which again you can get into by subscribing to SoccerWise on Patreon. But another question that came up, like Reggie Cannon just got released. He's not eligible to be signed right now by an MLS team. Like the fine print of the rule of teams can sign free agents right now, the player had to have already been a free agent when the MLS secondary transfer window closed. So Stuart Armstrong was obviously that. He has not had a club since early summer. Yes, that's why he was eligible for this.
DP signing, Tom. Do you feel electric? Is this the big move you've been waiting for?
Let me start on the positive side. I'm very glad that they made what they believe to be a significant addition. I was killing this team through the summer, disappointment, growing into ambivalence of like, all right, like if you're not going to change the roster or do anything at beyond the outskirts of the squad, guess what? You're just going to lose in the first round. And like, why? We know how this story ends. I don't know if he changes that or not, but I do want to commend them getting this signing done, because it would have been easy to say, oh, we'll go into the winter, try to sign somebody else. If this is not a DP deal that can be bought down, so if he's firmly a designated player through 2026, this is an abomination. And I think it's even unfair to be starting this conversation without knowing the answer to that question. But like, for the sake of it, if this is a Nico Gioacchini deal, where this is just a temporary DP, this is the easiest way in terms of accounting salary cap, all the minutia there, that's fine. I'm totally good with it. And I commend it even more, again, for trying to do something to change your team. But if a 32-year-old midfielder, Scotland international, Southampton from the championship last year, if he is a designated player firmly, awful. Just not good enough, right? And again, I'm worried that this is a false premise, and I'm getting myself to having this taken worked up for what will end up being no reason. So I want to keep hammering that point. But I really, really need to know the answer to that question. Hopefully after the show, I'll try to figure it out.
Yeah, you're going to be the one that gets us the answer.
That was the thing. So as I'm criticizing Vancouver, I'm the guy that should be finding this out. So this is, Vancouver should be criticizing me for not asking the question before doing this, right? I just want everybody to know, while I'm being very, being mean to the Colorado Rapids and potentially looking on the negative side of this signing, nobody yells at me more than me. So just don't worry about that.
I would add that you just called them the Colorado Rapids. That's probably not going to go over super well in the conversation. Tom's ready to jump out the window on this one. I will say one thing, which is, even if he is the low-end DP, the accounting has changed a bit with the 242 option. They could have added another U22 and brought in $1 million in allocation money if they hadn't gone this route to potentially cover someone's contract in a situation like this. So even if he is a low-end DP and they're able to get off of it next year, it is a little bit of a cheap move in general, because you're just using more of your salary cap space to sign this player rather than having gotten another player on top of him, or potentially 2 more if you could have added it and done the math the right way. We don't know the exact details on that and all of that. I will say this. Sounds like they're a better soccer team than they were 2 days ago. You look at this guy.
No, that's true.
You look at the way he plays. He should fit them really well. He's direct. He's physical. He's 32 years old, so he's been around. So I think there's some belief that you're going to get a level of performance. Obviously, there's going to be comparisons to Ryan Gauld. They both came up at Dundee United together. This is a player who's been in the Scottish national team when Gauld hasn't, which is a comparison point for the positive if you want. But he's a player who, I watched tape, I checked out some of his stats and all of that. He is direct both in pass and on the dribble. And he will go long quickly, and he will follow up the play, and he will play north-south. That's what this team wants. I think he fits the setup as well of one of the 2 forwards, and it might even free up Gauld to just be able to go and play where he wants. I think he's kind of the player they wanted Shop to be, and he hasn't been that guy.
Yeah.
And with the way they've pulled Vite deeper consistently in this group, They're looking for that second attacking player to be able to play off, hopefully, a Brian White if he's healthy and can come back. If not, whoever else it is up top. And I think that's what this player is supposed to be. So at this point in the window of there is no window open and you have no other options, short of Memphis Depay being signed, who KY718 wants to know what's going on there. Don't think he's heading to Vancouver. This seems like the best they were going to do now, and like has the potential to elevate them from fifth and sixth in the West to fifth and sixth, and could be dangerous in a playoff series.
Yeah, that's fair. And to your point, like they were better today than they were 2 days ago. So I commend them for that.
And they bought out Luis Martins at the end of that. So continuing on that road of success as they go forward. I hope they dominate more games. And of course, they'll host the Canadian Championship as well against Toronto coming up later in the month. Let's jump into the ice cream shop real quick here. Window closing on Friday. Everyone watched you on CBS Golazo, being the number one host in all of television, just like Jimmy Fallon. And now you are here to talk us through it. What do you want to do here?
Yeah, I'll run through a couple of the deals that got done on deadline day that had to do with MLS, and then a couple things that haven't happened and won't happen. So I think the first one for me would be Noel Buck on loan to Southampton until January with a purchase option. I'm very glad for him that he's going to go somewhere to play. Like, he's going to play with their U21s. Like, he was announced by Southampton Academy's Twitter account, not Southampton's first. Like, I think that's obvious, but wanted to say that as well. What it is the potential for a long-term look of, okay, he's going to be here and train with us for the next 3.5 months or whatever it is until January, and then they're either going to decide to pick up the purchase option or not. There's some people who have, made a fair point of, is this better than playing in MLS? As a whole, no, if he was starting every week. But this gets him out of the Caleb Porter torture chamber. So I am very glad that he's going to Southampton. And, like, his value is cratered. And, like, while not playing, like, if this was, the winter, I think Southampton just pay $4 million. And this is a permanent deal. But things have changed over the course of a year. So now that they do it with a loan, with no, immediate risk. And then if they like him, they pick up the purchase option. If not, he goes back to New England. So, all in all, I think this is a good move for Noel Buck.
I agree with you. It's unfortunate because that's like the Revs are a mess reason that it's a good, as you said, the Caleb Porter torture chamber. That's the reason that it's a worthwhile move, and that sucks. For a team that also sucks, he's a good soccer player. The Revs are bad, but he did not win the spots against the other guys in that group. He has not outplayed Harks or K or whoever else, and now they've added a Nigerian full international into that conversation as well. So for all parties involved, allow him to recoup as much value as he can. If you're the Revs, you're going to keep a sell on probably when you do let him go as well, and your hope is that maybe it even grows back to the number you thought you would have gotten originally.
Yeah, so again, I think that this is good for all parties. Another deal that got done to a Premier League club's U21 side, Christian Fletcher going on loan to Nottingham Forest for 1 year. So this one goes to next summer, and he'll be with Nottingham Forest's U21 team to start. And then there's a purchase option there as well. The DC United homegrown and US Youth International excelled for Swansea City's U21s I forget if it was spring or fall. He's already got experience in this, with the U21s out there. I don't believe that Swansea City's U21s were in the top U21 flight. Nottingham's is. So, like, could be a slight step up again for Christian Fletcher, but the fact that Nottingham put a purchase option in this deal, like, again, I think this is super interesting. I wish that there was a way that he was getting more minutes regularly for DC United. I think that would be better in this scenario, like we just talked about Buck. But same thing, he wasn't, playing a ton. He was getting some minutes, and if, Nottingham Forest are coming with a loan with the purchase option, I think you do that deal. So Christian Fletcher, again, I know that he was pushing for that move, so that's another one that happened. As for a few that didn't happen, Matai Akinboni, sticking with DC United homegrowns. Bournemouth made a bid. I was told it was, far below DC United's valuation. And if you remember, Tim Bezbachenko, the former Columbus Crew president, works for the conglomerate that owns Bournemouth. So I think that there's some familiarity there. He wasn't going to be able to join until the winter anyway because he's still 17. So there probably wasn't a ton of urgency to get this done. He would be staying with DC United until the winter no matter what. So in DC's camp, like, why would you accept a deal that's below your valuation if he has to stay until the winter anyway? So just reassess this if there's other offers in January, because Bournemouth aren't the only team that like him. So that's one that didn't get done. Another couple that didn't get done, like Diego Rossi was linked with Columbus Crew. It was linked with Toluca. I cannot tell you how quickly that got shot down. And for me,
Well, he wants to play with Kike Oliveira.
that's the thing. I stayed. Like I said, I let it go here on this show, making jokes about the Christian Oliveira Toluca stuff. Wasn't gonna let that one go. They were also Toluca were also linked with Martin Ojeda, and in both of the instances of the rumor, they were both alleged to be in conversations with Toluca. Toluca has not contacted Columbus or Orlando. I can say that with 100% certainty, and I can say with even further certainty, the Columbus Crew are not letting Diego Rossi go right now. Like. This is just such a non-story, and I was frustrated to even have to be asking the question. So those are a couple to look at. San Diego signed Alex Mighton from the. I'm blanking. Was that Nottingham Forest? He was one of the 700 players of Nottingham. Yes. England Youth International. He's eligible for the United States. I think that this would indicate to me, if he's coming to San Diego, that he has an idea that he wants to switch to the United States. That's just speculation, but that's what I would guess. It's a nice low-key signing by San Diego, and they're trying to loan him out. But, so he has somewhere to play for the next 3 months, but we'll see what happens there. And then lastly, Johnny Cardoso. Real Betis traded his discovery rights to Tottenham for X amount of games. No, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Tottenham negotiated a prefixed fee with Real Betis to sign Johnny Cardoso if they want to trigger it at some point in the future. That fee is 30 million euros. It's 33 million US. Just think of it as a release clause that's only active for one team, or discovery rights. Welcome. Get ready to learn MLS, buddy, to English soccer.
Well, they own. If someone else buys him, they get a sell-on fee of it.
Yeah, I forget.
Well.
Yes, I don't know if they need to buy that percentage, or I don't.
Like they would have to.
This is so convoluted, or like. Yeah. It'll be funny, like, and this happens in Europe as well, which I think is odd, but is what it is, right? Of like, you could pick up the purchase option at 30 million euros, and then in the same day sell him for 45 million if that's what his price goes up to. So it's a weird one, but here we are.
Mighton already loaned out to Nordsjælland.
He already was? All right, great. I didn't check over the weekend.
Yeah, San Diego is owned by the same ownership group that owns Nordsjælland, so they basically loan them out to their own team. It's a competitive team. I like this move. It's fun. It is like one of those, okay, let's go before we really build a roster in the rules and know what we have, like what makes sense. And it's if he's available to this, right? Nottingham, as you mentioned, have 97,000 players, highly thought after. It fits into the right to dream setup as well. Young players that you're going to value, give opportunity, and put them in a good spot. I thought this was a cool move. It was one that like came across on Friday, and I was like, cool. Yeah, that's a thing to do. That's more than just like, Sergio Ramos rumors, whatever. So I thought that one was really cool. The Johnny stuff, super exciting. If you are anyone who cares about these players and the U.S. men's national team or anything like that, to have a player playing at that level in the pool as well. Let's talk internationals. We're going to get into the USMNT roster. But before we get there, a lot of MLS players called up to other national teams. Some big ones, some new ones, some getting called back into teams. So I wanted to ask you, who gets you most juice? Who were you most excited about when you were like, oh, no way, that person's going to play for this team?
Cucho Hernandez back with the Colombian national team.
Yes.
For me, this is long overdue. I'm super happy for the player, and I'm super happy just in general that like you can start MLS and get into a big national team like Colombia. Like I don't remember exactly every call up or not call up, but like it wasn't like he was a regular for Colombia when he was with Watford and then stopped getting calls when he came to MLS. Like I think he was already out of the fringes of the national team, and he's worked his way back into it through his excellence at the Columbus Crew. And that's awesome. And I'm glad to see that the Colombian national team head coach wasn't like, oh, you play in MLS, like, sorry, you're out, right? Like, so, like, you can work your way into those teams. And, again, he's got 17 goals and 12 assists in 24 appearances between MLS and Leagues Cup this year. And, like, that doesn't encapsulate how incredible he's been on the field and what he means to this Columbus Crew team. So, I'm super juiced about this. I like World Cup qualifiers. I do hope that he gets in a couple of these games because he's earned it.
He's got 4 caps in his career. 2 came in 2023 here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel like a coincidence against the U.S. and Mexico.
Well, yeah, and they were outside of FIFA's windows, too. So, like, it was a super watered-down squad.
And then he played against Saudi Arabia in 2022. So, like you said, he is getting into a really competitive team, a team that made a Copa America final. This is 4 competitive games in World Cup qualifying. And literally the example is Diego Charo could never get into the Colombian national team because he played in Major League Soccer. And now Cucho's getting this opportunity. This was kind of what inspired this. So I'm glad you started with the good one. And I'm
Sorry to
really
take it from
excited. No, I'm really excited about this one as well. And like, this is one of those, I think, maybe more for us old head MLS fans where we're like MLS for CCL and like we root for MLS spaces. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to watch the Colombia game for sure.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't. I love Colombia, especially home World Cup qualifiers. It's legit. Barranquilla is awesome to watch. So that's a big one. Joseph Payne still called back into the Ghana team for the way he's played at the LA Galaxy, I think is a big one as well. That's a really cool one. Mateusz Bogusz is called into Poland team.
I love that's another one I'm just about because like Poland isn't Brazil, right? But like that's a big international team, and he was not. Like before he came to LAFC, he was on loan in the Spanish second division. So again, this is a player working his way into the senior national team through his play in MLS.
But the big one I'm going to say is that Martin Pas has been called up to the Indonesian national team for the first time ever. Called up or helped and assisted by the Indonesian FA president, I believe, and Eric Torhier, whose name some will recognize. He used to own DC United and was very cheap about it and didn't really do a very good job with owning that team and has maybe been in some ownership groups otherwise around. He's Indonesian and helped build this. If you've never heard this before, Martin Pas, originally born in the Netherlands, raised in the Netherlands. Obviously, there's a really strong connection between those two countries. Colonialism, that's the connection. And there is like this incredible groundswell of Indonesian support for Martin Pas.
Yep.
He did a couple of interviews where he said, I'd like to play for the Indonesian national team. That's my goal. That's my desire. And then since then, he's worked on his passport. He has come in as one of the highest vote getters in MLS Player of the Week, Saves of the Week, Goalkeeper of the Week, as well as for the MLS All-Star Game, purely because of his Indonesian fan base that has like flocked to him because of his desire to do this. It is one of the most MLS stories of all time. And now we're finally going to get to see him do it. I guess I probably should have looked up who the Indonesian national team is playing in these games.
Oh, so the numbers that the FC Dallas social media posts with Martin Pas, they do similar numbers to Lionel Messi in Inter Miami. It is awesome. Like he's like, we were joking before the show that he hadn't debuted yet, and he's already like a huge star. Like they love him. Like he hasn't even played yet. Like he's got 100% approval rating. I might not play at this point. you can only go down from here. But yeah, so this Martin Pas story is really, really cool.
So they play at Saudi Arabia, and then they host Australia and Indonesia for these two games.
Let's go!
Which are some huge games for Indonesia. It's World Cup qualifying because everyone except the U.S., Canada, and Mexico is going through World Cup qualifying, AFCON qualifying as well. This is going to be like a show. I promise you, I will turn this game on and be stoked about it.
Bro, where would you watch this game?
I'm pretty sure CBS they had the rights last cycle, so I assume they have the rights this cycle.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was the only one watching.
I was like, what do you do? A pay-per-view game like the South American World Cup qualifiers?
Well, I'll just go to my Indonesian soccer bar down the street. You wouldn't be shocked if I had one, though. Admit.
No, but if you just like went on a 3-minute rant about like your favorite Indonesian cuisine, 1,000% would have believed that. Like I'm almost surprised that didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm not as much of an expert on Indonesian food, so I don't want to like step into the wrong space. I also really want to look up this roster and see if there was, because this is one of those countries that would have American players, but they don't.
Naturalized.
American-born players. Philippines is the big one that you see on the women's side, but but on the men's side as well. So those are the national team ones we'll be circling. Of course, the U.S. plays Canada on Saturday. Then Mexico plays New Zealand on Saturday as well. And then they swap. And the U.S. plays New Zealand next Tuesday in Cincinnati. And Canada plays Mexico on Tuesday as well here in the United States. And I believe the Saturday game is in Kansas City. So if you're in any of those places, you go. If not, you're going to watch on TV and then listen to our coverage as well. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, the U.S. agreed to play a game in Mexico, right? Coming up?
October, yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. It's going to be the first friendly since the Michael Orozco Fiscal goal for Jurgen Klinsmann in Mexico for the U.S. So that'll be, I think, 10 plus years. It is not a game that normally happens, but necessary because all the teams are hosting the World Cup. So Mikey Varas, he is the interim coach for this game with Nico Estevez, and then goalkeeping coach Jack Robinson, who is working for U.S. Soccer. So my assumption is whoever takes over after this, we think it's Mauricio Pochettino. Whoever. Jack Robinson will remain the goalkeeper coach. I have the roster down here. It's most of the names you'd expect. Diego Cochin, one of the surprise call-ups. Austin Trusty, Marlon Fossey as well. Two of the other ones, Caleb Wiley getting added to the group. Aiden Morris.
Yeah.
One of the surprises a little bit, but Tyler Adams, of course, is out for this cycle. Haji Wright back into the group. Josh Sargent into the group as well, now healthy and available. Do you have any big picture thing? We're going to dig into the roster more and the game specifically Thursday as a preview. Any big picture thing that you want to see or you're excited about?
Yeah, I hope Diego Coaching, like, if he earns some minutes, that'd be super cool. I didn't know that he was this close to being called up to the senior national team. I'm well aware of how talented he is, and he was definitely one of, like, the elite level youth national team talents that I had. And to see him with the senior national team is very cool. I hope that it's not done for the wrong reasons, in that he can technically still declare for Spain and Venezuela, I believe. Like, he's eligible for several different nations. So as long as that this is done on merit, and like he's been progressing through the Barcelona ranks, from what I've read for people who are plugged into Barcelona, like, they truly believe that he's Marc-Andre ter Stegen's successor, that he's, the best goalkeeping talent coming out of the academy for a while. So yeah, I'm super excited to see him with the senior national team, and like particularly with the fact that Matt Turner is not starting at Crystal Palace, fell out of favor. Like, Ethan Horvath is what he is. Like, between Schulte and coaching, like, this is a big window for the both of them.
Peru is the other country.
Peru,
coaching as well. He's a Miami guy. Shout out Miami.
Shout out Miami.
Best out there. I think those would be really exciting. Those would be interesting. For me, it would be Aiden Morris. He was fantastic in MLS. I don't know that he's a national team player. He's gone over. He started to get minutes in the championship. Tyler Adams is out, obviously. That is a hole in the team. If he played at a high level in these two matches, it would be a good first step to say, oh, he could be a part of this group and he could be a threat going forward.
I totally agree. Like, dude, if I'm Luca Del Torre, I'm looking over my shoulder. Tanner Tessman, Gianluca Busio, two standouts from, the cycle that ended with the Olympics. Like, did Aiden Morris pass them? Like, I don't know the answer to that question, but like, I'm curious to see how this team evolves under Mauricio Pochettino when he starts. Like, Aiden Morris is a much different player than Luca Del Torre. Like, he could fit what Poch wants to do much better than Luca Del Torre. Like, I think that there's a real pathway to him being a regular in the senior pool because of how good he's played for Middlesbrough to start. And like, to your point, like you said, you're not sure if he's quite a senior national team level player. A year ago, or like when he was Canada were trying to get him to commit, I was like, look, man, I'm a big fan of Aiden Morris. Like, I love what he's doing with the crew. Do you really think that you're going to displace Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams and Yunus Musa? And to his credit, he, like, in his mind, yes was the answer to that question. And that's why he didn't take the Canadian call-up. I thought, like, oh, cool, like, you could just go start for Canada or at least be, like, the number one rotation option. And, like, over the course of a year, like, I'm rethinking my answer to that question. Like, I think that he's proven that he can be in the A group for this team, and like, shout out to him.
He has started all 4 games for Middlesbrough, which is huge.
The fans love him, dude. Tweet about Aiden Morris and like just look at the replies. Like, they love him.
But you mentioned, so I think you said this last week, Tanner Tessman moving to Lyon was not going to get called into this group. He is probably in the conversation around this.
Yeah.
But wasn't going to get called in. And my guess is he's not a starter anytime soon, and he's going to fight for minutes, and he probably doesn't really get called in until next summer, until he fights his way through Lyon. So that's the opportunity for Aiden Morris, which is like, you're going to get those call-ups now. And my guess would be that whoever's running the U.S. will also be safe with Tyler Adams when he ever comes back, because you don't have competitive games to play. You need him on the field for his club team. He needs to be playing there. So here's the opportunity. And then Johnny, we talked about with the potential transfer to Tottenham. He has not started for Real Betis yet this season. William Carvalho has come back from, I think he was suspended for potential sexual abuse charges. I know the sexual abuse stuff happened. I don't know why he wasn't starting at the end of last year. Johnny was starting in his place. Now Johnny is not, and Carvajal is starting alongside Mark Pick a last name that's Spanish. I can't remember.
Mark
the guy who played
Roca?
for Leeds and Bayern. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark Roca.
Thank you. And all of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in central midfield. Obviously, the other one is Tim Weah, not a part of this group, I believe because of injury.
McKinney isn't either.
And McKinney isn't. But on the Weah one, who's going to get the other starts on the wings? We got some messages in the Discord being interested in seeing Haji Wright get the start on the left and Pulisic on the right. Brendan Aronson could get opportunity here as well. Gio Reyna, of course, could get opportunity out there, but we don't know what the ideas are for Mikey Varas of what system he's going to run and how it works as well. So a lot to watch for there. One last question on the U.S., and then we'll do a quick on Canada. Sing Electric says, looking forward to 2026, how much of an L is it for the USMNT as a program that they weren't able to get Pochettino or another coach into the role in time for this window? Related, what are you looking for from the USMNT? We already went through that. What is your reaction to the fact that it'll be an interim manager for this window?
Really frustrating. There's not a ton of windows left. And this game against Canada and Jesse Marsh, like, that's a big one. Like, again, it's not the end of the world. It's just annoying disappointment that they couldn't get this deal done. This was, 2 weeks ago news was breaking, or more than that maybe now, that an agreement was reached? Like, I think reports came out today that, like, all right, they're finally just, like, preparing contracts and stuff, things could be signed this week. You couldn't have done that a week earlier to have Mauricio Pochettino take over? Like, it's really disappointing. There's not going to be a ton of times for, like, every window has to be maximized for new coaching staff to come in to evaluate the players and to start putting their game model, their principles with this group. And it just feels like a missed opportunity for him to not be here.
I agree with you. I will say if they could get him there, whether he's the coach or not, that's fine. Like if they could get it done in a way in which he's there, meets the players in person, is at the camp, all of that, that's probably enough in the fact that like they're playing New Zealand in one of the games at home. It is what it is. I agree with you. The Canada game's a big one. There's going to be extra juice to it because of Copa America, because of Jesse Marsh, and there are a few games left with juice for this U.S. group to like challenge them and feel pressure and all of that. And this is a big one as well. So I think it's a big one. On the Canada side of things, it's the group you'd pretty much expect called into this camp. The two big new ones is Stephen Afrifa, who's played really well for Sporting Kansas City. I didn't realize he was Canadian. And when he got called in, I was stoked about that. And the other one is Nico Sigur, who's Croatian Canadian, had said he wanted to play with the Croatian team, had been with their youth teams, playing with Hajduk Split, and now he's accepted the call up to Canada. He is a true defensive midfielder, which is massive for this group. It is one of the biggest holes. If you could find someone who can cover ground and fill in space for Steven Eustachio, this team takes a huge step up. Mm-hmm. That's been the biggest hole. They started Sam Piet at the World Cup. That's not sustainable anymore. Oso got chances at Copa America because he's physical and tried in there, which is great. Ali Ahmed coming through. Obviously, prayers up for Matthew Stranier, the best player on the planet. But, like, this is the hole in the team. Center back has been solved. That was the hole. Moise Bombito has solved a lot of that. Derek Cornelius has solved a lot of that. The 6 is the problem for this group. And so to get a dual international with high potential to come in and be committed, that's really exciting for this group. And I think that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be watching for in this camp. The rest is just watching the Ligue 1 Best 11 play because everyone on this Canadian team now plays in France, all the way down to Theo Bair, which is hilarious and awesome as well. All right. It was a fun one, Tom. A lot to go over. The playoff push is underway. We will preview this U.S.-Canada game more on Thursday. We'll talk about all other things going on. Shout out to Vancouver Whitecaps for randomly signing a DP at the last moment for us to hit on this show as well. If you don't already subscribe, go subscribe to our Patreon. You'll join our Discord, get into our conversations. You get our depth charts as well. And we've got some other exciting news and stuff going on for the end half of the season, so you can get involved with all of that. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.